So I'm Noelle D'Amico, the Director of Social Justice at the Workers' Circle. We're a Jewish social justice organization that's been around for 125 years, fighting for fundamental human equality and rights and our democracy. We were founded by Eastern European immigrants who faced pogroms and persecutions, and that drove them to these shores and to contribute to building a better, more beautiful world for all. By the way, you don't have to be Jewish to be part of the Worker Circle. In fact, I happen not to be. We welcome everybody who wants to build that better and more beautiful world together with us. And I am so glad that we're here tonight together with our core partner, the Center for Common Ground, Andrea.
Oh, hey, everybody. I'm Andrea Miller. I'm the founding board member and the executive director of Center for Common Ground. We have only been around since 2018, so we kind of got a ways to go before we make 100 years. But in the time that we have been around, we have been making good trouble. And one of our favorite good trouble partners has been the Workers' Circle. So tonight, we will be giving you ways to make trouble because now is the time when we are going to need to make good trouble to preserve our democracy.
Absolutely. So here's where we're going tonight. We're going to talk about how people have been building power that's impactful right now. We're going to talk about the abuses of President Trump and his power. We're going to talk about the responsibility of Congress to act and what we can do to get them there. We're going to make some calls to our lawmakers. Oh, yes, you'll get to try it out right here. If you've never made a call, do not worry about it. We're going to take you right through it, and then we'll talk about next steps and follow up. So let's get started, Andrea.
All right, wonderful, wonderful. Yes, we the people are already building power. So I already welcomed everybody. Josie is going to walk us through a bill that we've been working on, the SAVE Act. And boy, is that important. So Josie, go ahead and
Yes.
take it away.
Hello. Welcome, everybody. Thank you for being here. My name is Josie. I work at the Center for Common Ground, and I just wanted to talk about and thank a lot of you for the amazing movement that has been building up against the SAVE Act. This is a bill we talked about last month during our effective advocate training. I'm also going to put a call to action alert in the chat for you to take action if you haven't. But what I really wanted to say is the SAVE Act is a bill that's been on the Workers' Circle and the Center for Common Ground's radar for a while. But we were noticing there wasn't a lot of pushback in the beginning against this bill. Since our training a month ago, that has changed a lot. Last week, there were news articles all over the place talking about the SAVE Act. On our Instagram page, we posted about it a while ago, and suddenly hundreds of people were sharing our post telling people to call their legislators against the SAVE Act. And this call to action alert that I put in the chat, almost 300,000 people have emailed their members of Congress in opposition of this bill. Not only that, but there's a spreadsheet of some legislators that organizations in the space are targeting to make sure they oppose the SAVE Act. And I saw that one member of Congress voted in favor of it last session, but is getting so many calls from his constituents that he's considering changing his mind. So just want to remind you that you really do have the power to make a difference. And by being here, you're already doing that. I know it feels overwhelming reading the news every day, but making these calls, standing in the streets, showing up on meetings like this on your evenings really does change things. And so just wanted to remind people that we're already doing a lot to make a difference. And I believe Jay actually has a specific example of how that difference has been taking shape.
Hi, everyone. My name is Jay Falk, and I am one of the organizers at the Workers' Circle. And one of the wonderful things I get to do in this position is meet with organizers from across the country who are responding to what's happening now, and they're organizing and building community to fight back. One of the first folks I got a chance to talk to in the most recent kind of iteration of these conversations was telling me about why she got involved. And I don't know, she might even be on this call today. So she was telling me that she had a friend who had a child who was very sick. And right at the time that the funding freeze came down at the federal government, her child was scheduled to go into surgery. And because of the funding freeze, they were not able to access the funding that they were supposed to be accessing for this surgery. And this convener was telling me that this story was so motivating for her, and that this was one of the reasons that she wanted to fight back. And what we talked about was that this experience that her friend was experiencing wasn't just experienced by her friend, it's being experienced by people across the country. And when we have these experiences, these shared experiences where we see the impacts of this bad administration on our lives, that is what radicalizes people. And so making sure that you are there when those people have those experiences to turn those experiences into action, that is so important. And that is what we can do in this moment.
Jay, I think if I'm remembering this story correctly too, public outcry locally toward the hospital actually changed their policy, and they turned around and made sure that that care was delivered even despite the federal freeze.
I think that's correct that the kid ended up getting the medical care they needed because there was local funding that ended up getting provided.
Exactly. So remember, when one way gets blocked, don't give up. Keep pressuring and remember your local power. I know that we also have our wonderful Janice Gay here from the Center for Common Ground. We wanted to give Janice a moment to describe what she's seeing on the ground right now.
Well, one of the things, hello everyone, I'm Janice Gay. I'm an organizer here for Center for Common Ground in Virginia Beach Democracy Center, as well as Norfolk Democracy Center. One of the things we're seeing is unity amongst communities. And it's unfolding right before our eyes. People are being there for one another, you know, supporting one another, praying for one another. And we need that. One of the things I noticed that people are listening to the concerns of others. And that's so important because there's power in unity. We can do more together than alone. And so that's what we're seeing right now, which is so building up, it builds us up, it encourages us, it strengthens us to fight, to stand together, most importantly, to be unified. Thank you.
Absolutely. People across the country are feeling the impacts of the job losses that are going on, the threats to these major agencies that are providing essential services and care and protection. And one of the most important things we can do is build those bonds one to another of human kindness and help and understanding at this point while we're fighting back. Those things are not separate. It's not like, oh, we're all going to go advocate over here and then we'll help people over here. These things are intertwined. And Janice, thank you so much. Andrew's going to take us through some of what we're facing right now. We're not going to detail everything that President Trump has been up to because that would take us till probably tomorrow. But Andrew's going to set us up to understand the separation of powers and other pieces of
Right.
our constitutional government. Go ahead, Andrea.
All right, thank you. This is going to be a very quick civics lesson. So hopefully this reminds people of how the government is supposed to work. There are three separate but equal branches of government: executive, the president and vice president; legislative, that's the US House and the US Senate; and judicial, the Supreme Court. Next slide. Now, each one, there we go. The Senate is 100 members strong, and right now there are 53 Republicans and 47 Democrats and independents. The Constitution gives the Senate very special functions that only they do. So you heard this morning that they are responsible for working with nominees for cabinet position, ambassadors, judges, and senior executives. The Senate must confirm them. We have heard a lot of disturbing things. Greenland, the Panama Canal, Ukraine, Europe. Treaties negotiated with foreign nations must be ratified by the Senate. The House has no formal role in either process. Next slide. The U.S. House budget bills originate in the House. And technically now all appropriations bills start in the House. And then the Senate may sometimes have their own appropriation bills. It cannot officially be passed or signed by the president until both the House and the Senate agree on a budget bill. Right now, Mr. Trump says he likes the House version of the bill rather than the Senate version of the bill. Next slide. Do you want me to do a little bit of oversight? All
Go
right,
ahead.
yeah. One of the reasons why the president has moved so quickly dismantling agencies, well, there's a couple of reasons. Number one, there have been a number of them that have been investigating Mr. Musk. But the agencies commissioned specially for oversight, GAO, the Government Accountability Office, that office specifically reports directly to Congress. They do not report to the president, and they are independent, they're nonpartisan, and they audit, they evaluate, and they investigate for the U.S. House and the U.S. Senate. It is our main audit institution of the federal government. And Elon Musk is not part of GAO, never has been. Well, he may claim he's taken it over, but he's not officially part of it. And then the House and the Senate, as I said before, they are responsible for allocating funds. So all of these, oh, we're going to do this, we're going to do that, and we are going to say we're closing this agency after Congress has funded it, totally against the Constitution. Next slide. Also, Congress has oversight over the agencies, not the executive branch. All right, who wants to talk about the overreach? I'm enjoying this slide.
Oh my
I mean,
goodness, the overreach, like where do we even start? But President Trump is assuming that he has unlimited power. He does not, but he is trying to grab and do everything he can. We know the playbook is Project 2025. We know the plan. And so we have to, though, remember that he doesn't necessarily have all the power that he's claiming for himself, but he's trying to ram things through as quickly as possible. From rolling back DEI initiatives, which, let's be clear, this is rolling back civil rights advances for LGBTQI Americans, advances for women, advances that we have worked, that people have lived and died and fought for so many years. DEI is code there, and it particularly is attacking the histories as well, right? So going to the schools, saying what kind of history can be taught and not taught. So remember, these things might start up here, they trickle down to us. He has allowed Elon Musk free rein, getting around the usual prohibitions and procedures that any official federal employee would have to go through by making him this sort of advisor. He's able to skirt some of those things. However, remember, Congress has oversight over the agencies themselves, so they need to be exerting that oversight, not aiding and abetting or standing idly by. There are many other things that have happened. Restricted gender affirming treatments for minors. They have moved to end birthright citizenship. That just access to our data, information from Social Security numbers to tax returns, not to even mention ending foreign aid, shuttering US aid for the most part and bringing it inside the State Department. It goes on and on. You may know, next slide though, this is what I want you to think about. And I really want you to think about this. Next slide the other way. We must not cede our power voluntarily. Some of you might have seen this weekend that President Trump was busy trying to stop congestion pricing in New York and other sorts of things. And he crowned himself king on social media. But President Trump is not a king. He only has the powers of the president that the Constitution gives to every president. And despite his assertions to the contrary, despite the fancy pants, unitary executive theory nonsense that has been promoted by extremists since the Reagan era, President Trump doesn't have any more power than any other president had before him. Now, is he exploiting that power? You bet. Is he using every ounce of that power? You betcha. Is he moving as fast as he possibly can to try to make it impossible to keep up? He sure is. Is he trying to make us believe that we can do nothing? You betcha. And that's the key to this. We can't sit back and say, well, you know, pro-democracy lawmakers don't have the majority in Congress, and so there's nothing we can do to stop them. Instead, we have to really dig deep and roll up our sleeves. And just like we've done in every history against impossible odds, from the abolition of slavery to the movement for women's suffrage to the civil rights leaders of the 20th century, we have to roll up our sleeves and make possible what first seems impossible. Right now, we have President Trump and unelected Elon Musk attempting what is known in the field of political science as an administrative coup, capturing institutions, exerting control over data. It's not done by military means. It's done by destroying institutions and perverting them from their original purpose. Right now, they are enriching themselves and all the cronies with them to the tune of millions upon millions upon millions of dollars. Next slide. I want you to think, though, before it's easy to get catastrophic, right? And it can feel like this stuff is happening so fast because we're not only feeling it, it is happening, right? This is an extraordinary moment. We've not had to fight in this way before, and we're going to have to learn how to keep it up because they're not going to stop. They're going to keep going. But I want you to remember, we are not living under fascism. We are fighting fascist politics. We are not in a dictatorship. We are fighting against this lawless power grab that's going on. But there are many windows yet for us to exercise our power. And if we go too fast, we end up ceding that power. We want to use absolutely every ounce of our power. You know, when Viktor Orban was busy taking over Hungary, one of the things that the Hungarian people have noticed about what's going on here right now is that the average American has way more power than they did to resist that coup by Viktor Orban. So they urge us from the other side of history, do not cede your power. The minute we flip into absolute mode, they win. Think about it. What have they been trying to get folks to do? Oh, resign voluntarily, censor yourself, self-deport even, right? They want us to comply in advance and start doing those things that'll pull the whole country into line, where it makes it feel like we can't do anything else. But what I'm telling you right now is that the moral line runs through every single one of us, and every single one of us matters right now. What we mean, the decisions that we make right now are what will determine the course of our nation. And sometimes those decisions are about how we reach out to Congress. Other times they're about how we call the local community hospital. Other times they're conversations we're having with librarians about what books are on the shelves in our libraries and our children's libraries. Sometimes we're supporting people who have lost their jobs to this, but it's up to us. It is up to us. Next slide, please. I want you to think about this. This is not pie in the sky. We do not need dream casting. We do not need overly rosy assessments. We need to be very real. This is an uphill, very hard battle. But I want you to think about this. Nelson Mandela once said, "It only seems impossible until it's done." And in every movement for people's freedom and dignity and democracy, it has seemed at some point impossible. It is up to us to defy those odds by remaining unified and taking action together. Next slide. I want Jay, if she would, to come back on and talk about what some initial pressure on Congress delivered to her own congressman this past week.
Hi, everyone. So I'm originally from Northern Virginia, and I got a chance to see my congressman in the news last week. My congressman, Representative Beyer, was interviewed by Axios, and he said it's been a constant theme of us saying, please call the Republicans. Representative Beyer is a progressive Democrat in a very blue area. And he's been getting so many calls from his constituents that he had this quote in the news. And I want you to look at this quote as a really good example of pressure being power. Representative Beyer already is probably on the right side of most of our issues, but he was getting so much pressure from his constituents that it was affecting his day enough to put this quote in the news. After he put this quote in the news, he got so much blowback from constituents, more constituents calling and holding him to account, that 2 days later, just 2 days later, he posted this on social media. He was forced to go on the phones for a couple hours talking to his constituents directly because he got so much negative feedback about this. So when we say pressure is power, what we mean is that you create pressure every time you call your legislator. And your legislator might be a progressive Democrat, like Representative Beyer. They might be a moderate Republican or Democrat, or they might be a right-wing Democrat. And what you're doing when you're calling them is not just trying to get them to vote a certain way. Representative Beyer probably is already going to vote a certain way. Your right-wing congressman may not be voting the way that you want. It's not about getting them to vote necessarily. Obviously, we want to move people if we can. What we're hearing is that even right-wing MAGA congressmen are hearing from so many constituents that they are not willing to take a stand on the SAVE Act to try to push it into reconciliation. I had a conversation on a coalition call today that they have been hearing quietly behind the scenes that these congressmen are not willing to be bringing the bill up in private coalition or private caucus conversations. That is the impact your pressure creates. Your pressure creates a system where their decisions are affected by what they think they will receive from their constituents. And the more that you give pushback to them, the more that calculus is in their mind on any specific issue, no matter their party. And that's why it's so important when we say we need to do these advocacy calls.
Thanks so much, Jay. Let's go to the next slide. And basically, again, don't give up your power. We might not have all the votes we need to stop any particular piece of legislation that's going through, but remember, we also, through that pressure, are making them have to account for that pressure in every single decision that they make. Some of them have heard from Elon Musk or from others, if you stand up, particularly Republican congressmen, they're going to get primaried into the ground. We've got to send them another message. If you don't stand up, you're not going to see yourself back in office. We, the people, have to do this. So there are lawmakers rethinking every day. This is important. The media doesn't always capture all of it, but you're starting to see some fissures begin. We have to keep the pressure on every single member of Congress. And we also have to be the one to reach out to our neighbors and say, no matter their party, this is not about party. This is about what's happening to our democracy, to talk with them, to ask how they're being impacted by these changes, what they're feeling, and those who are ready to move and make calls and contact, we have to make common cause and do that right now. We the people, there's nobody else. Congress is not going to save us on its own. We have to march in and demand that they do their job. Next slide. So what are some of the things Congress can do? Well, first of all, again, quick review. There are checks and balances in our U.S. Constitution. Remember what Andrea said at the beginning. These different branches are equal. They're equal. They're intended to be equal. They are not intended to be subservient to the executive. They are co-equal branches. The founders intended that they would be in conflict, they'd have to resolve, they'd have to check, they'd have to balance one another. Now, right now, it's important to remember that judicial injunctions have blocked and stopped many actions. There's so much going on, it's hard to track all of it. We had put a New York Times free article in the chat. Let's put that back in. That'll give you a sense of the blizzard. There are more judicial actions more cases being filed every day. So the lawyers are working overtime on this. Those things are happening. Doesn't mean we're going to win every case that's out there, but they're going to keep filing and keep filing. What can Congress do? Well, Congress, remember, has oversight of agencies and they have the power of the purse. What are they equipped with? They can hold hearings. They can issue subpoenas, and yes, they can slow down legislation with the filibuster. Now, you might say, no, well, I cannot believe you're talking about the filibuster. Well, the filibuster is absolutely a terrible racist rule that was put in place in order to protect slaveholding interests, and it has stood in the way of our freedom to vote and historically has stood in the way of civil rights advances. Right now, the House is on fire, and we need Congress to use every tool in their toolbox. And in the Senate, that also means the power of the filibuster for any legislation that's coming through that would further empower this administrative coup we're seeing it. Congress has oversight over these agencies, and they can do investigations, they can demand reports, they can show up at these agencies and actually demand entrance rather than knocking and sort of asking politely. They are the Congress, they have oversight. But the single most important thing we can ask them to do is to speak up publicly on behalf of our democracy and against this administrative coup and this executive overreach. Next slide. When we speak to Congress, we want to speak as clearly and as plainly, as simply and as straightforward as we can. I urge you, we need to call them. We can email them, like use every tool that we have, right? We can be in the streets. We can not, do protests outside their office. But tonight we're focused on calls because we want to make sure those of you who maybe have never made a call to Congress have a model for doing so. So we're going to call Congress. We're going to keep pressuring them publicly, right? You've got a social media account, post what their response is when you send them an email. If it's something you're unsatisfied with, keep at them, write a letter to the editor, do the things that let what they're saying not stay private, but make it public if you're upset about that. Show up for protests. Many of you were out at the not a king protest, but a president protest on President's Day. Good for you, for those who were able to be there. I heard there were 10,000 people in Washington, in Union Square in New York City. I know there's a huge protest in CC, but importantly, in other state capitals, they were there. Remember, you can also do something like that. It's very effective to do local protests and things like that. Things that are very homegrown actually have enormous power for your members of Congress. The other thing is, if your representatives and senators are doing the right thing, call them and let them know. Call them and encourage them. Call them and say, we've got your back. Thank you for speaking up. Here's another example that you can use when you speak out against this. Next slide. So we're going to go now to just some simple actions of calling and what a helpful script can look like that you can use as a model. We're going to give it a try tonight, and all of us are going to have the opportunity to make a call. Yes, we know it's after office hours, but their voicemails are on. And so we're going to fill up the voicemails of our local offices of members of Congress on this issue. For now, I'm going to turn it over for these next steps to Fran, who used to work, Fran, right, in a congressional office. I know Jay worked there. I think Josie did as well. You got these calls, right? Tell us a little bit more about, who's on the other end of those calls when we're calling.
Yes, I definitely did. This discussion so far has definitely made me think of that time. So hello, everyone. I'm Francesca, or Fran. I'm the senior social justice organizer at the Workers Circle. And just after I tell this brief story, I'm going to walk us through the steps of finding the phone number for your congressperson's district office, how to make that call. We'll go over the script together. And I know this is something some of you might have done hundreds or even thousands of times before, but we know that some of you might have never called your congressperson, and we want to make sure everyone has the skills they need to do this work. We're in it for the long haul. We're really grateful that more people are taking action on this issue than ever before. And just to touch on my own experience very briefly, I was an intern when I was in college at the district office of Catherine Clark. I worked at the district office in Malden, Massachusetts, when I lived in that area going to college. And I was that person picking up those phones. So I'm going to go over how to make calls and some best practices. But one thing I always like to say is, remember, even when you're expressing your anger and your passion, to please be kind to the people picking up the phones. They're usually interns. Some of them are even in high school or college, or young staffers whose job is to take your comment and write it down. And so even when you're feeling that fiery passion and wanting to express your displeasure, to just be nice to the person on that phone. Okay, now I'm actually going to share my screen to take us through the steps, if you've never done it before, of how to find your the phone number for your member of Congress. So we have this wonderful link here for congress.gov. That I think John just put in the chat as well. So it looks like this if you've never looked up your members of Congress before. So you'll put in your address or your zip code. I live in Brooklyn. I'm going to put in my zip code. And now my members of Congress are all going to come up. So my senators, I live in New York State. So it'll be Senator Gillibrand and Senator Schumer. And then if you're right on the border of a couple districts, you might have to put in your more precise address to find out who your representative is. But I know, actually, now I'm seeing this page. I remember my representative is Nydia Velasquez. So I'm going to click here. Then I get this information here about her contact information and her website. And so right here under this main contact that comes up, you can see a number for the Rayburn House office building. That is your congressperson's DC office. And like some people were already saying in the chat, it's definitely effective to call the DC office, but it can be even more effective for you to call your representative's local office. Sometimes that DC voicemail box can fill up faster, so your message might not get through if it's already full. The district office is usually a little less busy, and you might actually have a chance to talk with a staffer in person if you call the local office. So that's what we recommend tonight, though you can also call both. So to find that local number, you can click on the website of your congressperson. And so now here I'm on her website. I'm going to scroll down to the bottom. Oh, here are all the different office locations. So I would go to, okay, Brooklyn district office, that's close to where I live. I'm going to give a call to that local office. So just wanted to make sure everyone had a chance to see those steps, to walk through it. If you've never done this before, we really want to demystify the process. All this information of your members of Congress's phone numbers is available online. You should be able to call them and find that information easily. So I just wanted to make sure everyone knew how to do that. I'm going to stop sharing my screen now. So before we go back to our slides and start reviewing our call script, just a few other best practices for when you call to leave a comment for your member of Congress. You want to make sure that you're prepared with a script provided by an advocacy group, or even just notes that you've made for yourself with the message that you want to leave, so you don't get nervous or forget an important piece of your message. So this is the script we're going to use today. As you're looking at the script, you can see it's important to always state your full name and address at the start of your call. This establishes that you are a constituent of the person you're calling. And then that means that your member of Congress must make a note of your opinion. I saw there were some questions in the chat about whether you can call people who aren't your congressperson, and you can, but they're not obligated in the same way to track and record your comment. So it's really important to call your members of Congress and to do that step of figuring out who is your representative and your senator. And as I was saying, when I worked in a congressional office, a big part of my job was truly answering those phones and making notes on the opinions of my constituents. And I was working in a district office in 2018 when Trump was potentially going to be impeached in Congress. And I remember there were people on the phones every day calling, urging Representative Clark to impeach Trump. And I saw we were keeping track. We were tallying the numbers, everyone who called to say impeach Trump, impeach Trump. And there was a tipping point. The Congresswoman was definitely looking at that data, looking at that tracker, and it made a huge difference in her ultimate decision to vote to impeach. So I've seen with my own eyes that it does make a difference. Finally, just always make sure to make an effort to speak slowly and clearly on the phone. And if you're using a script like this, you can always add a personal story, a personal detail, a way in which you've been affected by this policy, or a neighbor or a friend. You can always add that, but if that feels, like too difficult to do, you can stick with that script, but it always makes it extra impactful to add a personal anecdote in your call. So now it's time for us to make our calls. The script is here on the screen, and I'm just going to read through it. And I encourage everyone, while you're muted, to practice reading through it one time as well. And then we're going to mute everyone so we can make our calls. But I'll just read through it, and everyone can practice on their own, okay? So I'll say, hello, my name is Francesca. I live at 123 Main Street in Brooklyn. I'm calling as one of your constituents to urge you to use every tool in your congressional toolbox to fight back against President Trump's lawless action that threaten the security of our nation and its people. I want you to speak out against his destruction of federal agencies and deliver needed services and aid, and to demand that he and Elon Musk stop violating our privacy. Get Elon Musk out of my personal business, please. I urge you to vote against any budget that promotes these and other abuses of power. Importantly, I want you to speak out publicly and stand up against these dangerous attacks on our democracy and use your power to stop them. Thank you for listening to my comment. Please take action. Goodbye. That's how I would do it. Hopefully everyone was practicing along with me. And now we're going to take a few moments or several minutes actually for everyone to make your calls. See if you can do at least one call to the district office while we're on together. Yeah, Jay is saying, get out your phones and make those calls. You might already have that number saved. I saw someone was saying that she calls every day, and you can do that. You can set yourself an alarm on your phone to remind you to call every day or once a week. I've done that before on issues that are important to me. Wonderful. So everyone call. I'm going to make my call. everyone. We're going to take one more minute for everyone to make their calls. Hopefully you get to do at least one call, and if you have time, you could go for one more. Good job, everyone. I'm seeing the reports roll in. And people had questions too about whether they can use the same script for a Republican congressperson. You definitely can, but feel free to tweak it and make it your own, whatever you think is the best tone. This is the base for you to go off of, but you can change it if you want as well. This is the base we wanted to offer you all. Awesome. I'm seeing so many people confirming they left a message. I left my message for my representative, for Representative Velasquez here in Brooklyn. Wonderful job, everyone. I think I'm going to pass it back to Andrea and Noelle. I think when Noelle's off her call.
So I had a very interesting experience. I'll just share. I was trying to call the local district offices of both Senators Schumer and Gillibrand, and there was no voicemail hooked up, and it dropped the call. And so I tried to call another office in New York City, also had trouble getting through. That's really not good. So I'll be calling them tomorrow morning to let them know they need to do something about their voicemail, because constituents need to be able to make their voices heard. I'm seeing all the calls that were able to be placed, and I'm so excited. Thank you for leaving the voicemails that you did. Thank you. We should open it up and see if you've got any questions or thoughts from this. And yes, those of you who've asked, are we going to send you the call script? We will send you the call script. You betcha. You're going to get a follow-up email from this program that will include the video of the program, the slides of the program, and the call script. So never fear, it's coming.
And there will be a long list of things that you can do in addition to making phone calls.
Right.
There are actions you can take.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Yes, I'm seeing one person called the local but was rerouted to the DC office. If that's happening, make sure you get all the way through. That's a real sign that they're getting overwhelmed by people calling. That's actually a very strong sign of constituent power. But we definitely want that line back on. They better hire some more people to take care of the people's business, is what I got to say to that. Let's see. Wonderful. I'm so glad in South Carolina, Laura, you were able to talk to someone in a local office. That is wonderful. I'm so glad. Some of the offices have turned off their voicemail after business hours. That's rather new. Again, friends, this is a result of hearing a lot from us. So if you weren't able to get your call through, or you had an experience like me, please pick up that phone and call them tomorrow. There is absolutely every reason to do it. It's wonderful. This is great. A lot of people are calling in. Can you call more than once about the same subject? Absolutely, you can. You can call more than once. And if you have a personal story, not all of us, we might want to think about that. Do I have a personal story, very briefly in one sentence, that I want to add? If you don't have a personal story, think about a value that you hold that's really important to you. I believe in the right of every single American to have the freedoms promised in our Constitution. Or I believe that representative government means that Congress really listens to what the people are saying. So I hope you'll listen to me. You can find other values that you have about respect, or you name the value. You'll find out, what best how to say it, because this is about you putting it into your own words.
One of the questions I saw in the chat were, are emails effective? And the answer to that is yes, emails are effective. But what you do want to understand is when you're calling a federal office, basically one phone call is equivalent to 10 emails, because there's the understanding with an email. In many instances, they're pre-written and all you had to do was basically click to send it. When you make a phone call, that is personal. They count emails, but they really count calls.
I just saw somebody uplift a question. Andrew, you kind of touched on this. I feel like we're touching on it a bit in the chat, but just some representatives are making it intentionally tough to reach them by call or maybe even email without a call to action alert. If they're making it harder to reach them by phone, what is the best next step? I would say making those emails, or sending those emails if you can, filling out the online forms. Any other suggestions that you all could?
My other suggestion is, if you are able to make it over to the local office, then show up. And you can show up with a head of steam. I know I always did. Tried calling your office and you turned off your voicemail. That means I have to come down here.
Another thing you can do if you're having a hard time reaching them is think about who in the community they might already know. Community leaders like church leaders or synagogue leaders or other VIPs, reaching out to them and saying, do you have a good way to connect with this representative? Or asking them to reach out on your behalf.
Yeah,
Oh.
definitely go there though. Don't hesitate to go right on down. You don't have to have an appointment. You can stop by. You can say, look, I tried to call, couldn't call. This is really important to me. And I decided to drive over and tell you in person. That's fine. Tell the person at the front desk. That's incredibly impactful, because think about it. You're somebody who's taken the time to go all the way down there. So absolutely, absolutely. This is great. I'm trying to keep up with all your messages here. When
Other things
Yeah.
about like social media. Yeah. If you follow them on social media, you can reply to their posts, you can tag them, there's so many avenues that you can take to let your members of Congress know you're paying attention and you're not okay with being ignored. Let me see what
I know
other
a lot of folks are also asking about like, oh, I want to be calling multiple times a day. If you have time and energy to be calling multiple times a day, I really encourage you to reach out to us about our Democracy Circles program. There are ways to get involved in more involved ways that are more impactful than just calling more and more times. You really want to get more people into the fight if you have that extra time, and we can help you do that. So please, I encourage you, reach out to us. I'll put the Democracy Circles link in the chat again. If you have more time and you want to be more involved, there are more substantial ways you can be involved beyond just calling.
Jay said just what I was thinking, and I actually just saw a question of saying, can I organize a group of people to go to my legislator's office? And in fact, that's one of the main asks that we ask our Democracy Circles to do, is to take that next step of gathering people together for either an in-person or virtual visit to that office, that district office of their congressperson or their senator. So that's another way to take action. And yes, please reach out to us about joining Democracy Circles. Jay and I and our colleague Rachel, who's not on tonight, are the point people who will help you get started and share with you all kinds of materials and walk you through the steps of taking action on bills like the SAVE Act.
So we've got a number of next steps. We hope that you'll join us next month for Effective Advocate in March. It'll be March the 20th. We will send you the link to be able to sign up then. We have already started phone banks to Wisconsin around the Supreme Court race. They're every Tuesday and Wednesday with the Center for Common Ground. We are dropping the link and we'll also send it to you in email. The Workers Circle is going to be starting up our phone banks using Center for Common Ground's wonderful scripts and research so that we can make calls to voters and make sure they have the nonpartisan information that they need. For those of you who don't know what a phone bank is, a phone bank very simply is when a whole bunch of people gets together and calls a lot of voters to encourage them to know what their rights are, to equip them with information they need, whether it's about early voting or voter ID, and encourages them to go out. Sometimes political parties will do them. And in the old days, there used to be these banks of phones, and we'd all go in and pick up the phone and you make as many calls as you can. In nonpartisan phone banking in the 21st century, it's a little bit different. So we'll bring you all on a Zoom call and explain how the process works. Center for Common Ground provides software so that you can automatically dial and have messages in advance using your computer. And it's a very easy to learn, easy to do process. And it's so beautiful because it's talking human being to human being. And Center for Common Ground's calls are targeted to voters of color who are already registered that we're calling to make sure they know key pieces of information. Remember, not all voters live in districts where there's good communication. Many voters might have heard early voting switch, but they're not sure when they begin. Also, many states have moved polling places, have a limited drop boxes, right? So we want to make sure that every single voter has the information they need to make their voices heard. And we know that communities of color have been specifically targeted by these barriers that state officials have passed laws and restricted a number of the ways to access the polls, and they've done it specifically in communities of color. So that's why it's really especially important. And I can tell you from experience, there's nothing like talking to the voters. And these are folks that regularly welcome our calls. And so I want to really encourage you to take these next steps. We know there's a lot more going on beyond this. And so we're going to give you some options that we know of for taking a stand for diversity, equity, and inclusion for all of our civil rights. There's a nationwide boycott for the day of February 28th that's being organized. There are many protest opportunities. And again, remember the impact of being local. So don't think that just because you have 10 people, that's nothing. Man, 10 people is a protest. Get out there, make yourselves visible, and you'll find other people in the community will come to you and say, I'm so glad you're out there. I was in a smaller protest this weekend holding a sign that said, "No kings, we demand democracy." And people came up to me and said, "Thank you so much. I'm running here. I can't join. How do I get connected?" Making yourself visible and unapologetic for our democracy is how we reach people who right now may be a little afraid or a little uncertain, and you can do it. One of the tools, of course, are the phone calls that we've been just making, and we'll be sure to get back to you very swiftly in email with all of these pieces. I do want to flag again, the SAVE Act is coming down the pike. It is either going to be introduced next week for a vote, or it's going to be dropped into the budget measures that are coming in mid-March. So we are watching that with an eagle eye. We will be sure to be in touch with you with ways that you can take immediate action as this terrible bill hits the floor. There are many other things that you can do. Andrea, I know among them is the very important message about COVID tests, that today is the last day that you will be able to order free COVID tests from the government. So please go out to https://covidtests.gov/ order your COVID tests tonight. Tomorrow will be too late. Andrea, any closing words you have for us as we wind up?
Oh, I've just really been so busy in the chat. So there will be constantly new things coming up, new issues, because every week there is something else. I love the old saying, silence is complicity. So if we don't say anything, we are tacitly accepting. So use your voice, use your feet, use all the means that you have to let your elected know this is not acceptable. We will not accept this.
That's right. We the people, friends. That's who we are. We the people. And we will be the bulwark for our democracy. We will keep it standing, and we are not going to comply in advance. We're not going to roll over. We're not going to be silent. We're going to take it to Congress. We're going to take it to the streets. We're going to take it to the phone lines. We're going to keep up on those emails. We are not giving up. And I want you to remember, wherever you are tonight, you are not alone. Hundreds of thousands of people are taking action in myriad ways right now. This is a moment. We are not going to let it pass us by. And I would close by just reminding us all of the wonderful words of the poet and civil rights activist June Jordan. We are the people we've been waiting for. We are the people we've been waiting for. Thank you so much for being with us tonight. Go out, be encouraged, reach out to your neighbors, don't give up. Join us next on March 20th. We're going to get this done, friends. Thank you for being with us tonight.
Take care. Bye-bye.